A Senate committee hearing took a sharp turn as Senator Ted Cruz clashed with New Mexico Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse over voter identification requirements and election security. The hearing opened with lighthearted banter between lawmakers, including jokes about long speeches and state pride, before shifting to a serious discussion on election integrity.
Get here for our committee hearing.
I appreciate it very much,
right.
and having
Thank
served with you for a long time, I know that you are quite capable of a wonderful filibuster.
Thank you.
I am sure we heard the virtues of the great state of Minnesota.
Yes, and our highest voter turnout, which is higher than Texas. And the only thing you have on us is a bigger state fair, but that's only because you're open for 30 days. We actually have the bigger state fair, but continue on, Senator Cruz.
I might disagree, but I'll pick a different forum for that discussion. Good afternoon. Welcome to everyone. Every American wants election processes that they can trust and that are neutrally applied. When secretaries of state or even state Supreme Courts contravene their own laws in order to skew election rules towards preferred political outcomes, this undermines the public faith in the democratic process. One such area for this is voter ID. According to Forbes, 81% of Americans support voter ID, including 62% of Democrats. Voter ID, I believe, should be a basic minimum requirement for a free and fair election. And yet, voter ID right now is opposed on a partisan basis by virtually every Democrat in Congress and by a great many Democrat secretaries of state. Secretary Oliver, you have been vocal on this topic. You told the Albuquerque Journal, quote, "I support policies that ensure the integrity of our elections. New Mexico requires voters to provide personal identifier information when voting in person, with increased ID requirements for absentee voting. Photo voter ID laws, however, can make it harder for some communities to vote. I don't support this policy." According to the numbers I just cited from Forbes, 81% of Americans and 62% of Democrats support photo ID for voting. Why is it that the policy you embrace is different from the policy that a majority of New Mexicans want to see?
Thank you for the question, Senator. In my position as Secretary of State, first of all, I don't make the laws in the state of New Mexico, but I do have a bully pulpit in which to espouse my viewpoint. As 16 years being an election administrator in my state, there are communities for which having some physical form of ID, and of course it looks different in every state, states that do require physical photo ID in order to vote. In some states, there's a wide variety of such photos that can be used. In some, it's much more limited. Obviously, states that have a wide variety of voter IDs available, that's, I think, personally a better policy. But in my state, there are communities where even getting a tribal, for example, we have a lot of tribal voters in my state. 12% of my state is Native American. Many tribal IDs do not contain a photo. They're not necessarily issued in the same way that we understand photo ID to be issued.
Madam Secretary, with respect, states can address that, and many states, like the state of Texas, provide for a zero-cost photo ID for voting. I will say the polling also shows over 60% of African Americans support photo ID. I will say the argument that minorities can't get photo ID, I think is condescending. I'm Hispanic. I know how to get a driver's license. I have heard from many in minority communities that getting a photo ID is not an onerous requirement. And I'll point out that your website indicates, quote, "A physical form of identification is only required for first-time New Mexico voters who registered by mail and did not include identification with their voter registration application form. Otherwise," the website continues, "the only identification needed to vote is, quote, a verbal or written statement of identification including a name, year of birth, and registered address." So you don't even require a date of birth, just a birth year. So in about 30 seconds, you can attain enough information about someone to allow you to steal their vote. Madam Secretary, do you know the name Harris Hartz?
Senator, that name is vaguely familiar to me.
Well,
I don't remember.
Harris Hartz is a judge, a federal judge on the 10th Circuit who sits in Albuquerque. And in 2017, Judge Hartz went to vote. And he was barred from voting when the Albuquerque city clerk's record showed that somebody else had already voted under his name. This is a federal judge in New Mexico, but you just needed his name and year of birth, which was pretty easy to find. He ended up ultimately having to vote. He was initially denied the right to vote. Ultimately, he was given the ability to vote on a provisional vote. Before voting, he presented his driver's license to the voting center staff. And after an investigation of the fraudulent ballot, Judge Hartz said, quote, the signature was nowhere near mine, and it didn't even look like Harris Hartz.
That's right.
Does it concern you when federal judges are having their votes stolen in New Mexico because there's not a photo ID requirement?
Senator, I remember this issue now. This was a mistake made by a poll worker. That's what happened. And that mistakes can be made by poll workers even when a physical ID is shown.
But what was the mistake?
The poll worker brought up the incorrect record, they brought up Mr. Judge Hartz's record as opposed to the individual who was casting the ballot. Neither the poll worker nor the voter noticed the discrepancy, and a mistake was made. And so when Judge Hartz came to vote, there was an investigation into what exactly happened. So it wasn't that the individual was attempting to steal Judge Hartz's vote. It was that there was a clerical error that was made. And clerical errors do get made in elections. They're regrettable, but they do.
And I think we should protect everyone's right to vote. And I agree with 81% of Americans that photo ID requirements protect the integrity of our elections and protect your right to vote, my right to vote, and even federal judges' rights to vote. Thank you.
Okay.
Senator Cruz emphasized that Americans across the political spectrum want election systems they can trust and that are applied fairly. Cruz warned that when state officials or courts alter election rules in ways that favor political outcomes, public confidence in democracy is undermined. He pointed to voter ID laws as a central issue, citing polling data showing that 81% of Americans, including 62% of Democrats, support voter identification requirements at the polls. Calling voter ID a basic minimum requirement for free and fair elections, Cruz argued that opposition to photo ID has become largely partisan. He then turned to Secretary Toulouse Oliver, referencing her past statements supporting election integrity while opposing photo voter ID laws, which she has said could make voting harder for certain communities. Cruz questioned why her position differs from what he described as the views of a majority of New Mexicans. In response, the Secretary explained that while she does not write state law, she speaks from her experience as an election administrator. She argued that access to photo identification varies widely, particularly in Native American communities. She noted that many tribal IDs do not include photographs and are not issued in the same manner as standard government IDs. Native Americans, she said, make up about 12% of New Mexico's population. Cruz pushed back, noting that some states offer free photo IDs for voting and citing polling showing strong support for photo ID among African American voters. He rejected the idea that minorities are unable to obtain identification, calling that argument condescending. Cruz also highlighted New Mexico's current voting rules, which allow voters to cast ballots using only a name, birth year, and registered address in most cases. He argued that this system makes voter impersonation easier and cited a 2017 incident involving a federal judge in Albuquerque who was initially prevented from voting because someone else had already cast a ballot under his name. Cruz noted that the fraudulent ballot was later found not to match the judge's signature. Does it concern you when federal judges are having their votes stolen? Cruz asked. The secretary acknowledged the incident but described it as a clerical error by a poll worker, not intentional fraud. She explained that the wrong voter record was pulled and that neither the voter nor the poll worker noticed the mistake at the time. An investigation later confirmed the error. Cruz closed by reaffirming his support for photo ID requirements, stating that they help protect the integrity of elections and safeguard the right to vote for all Americans, including judges. The exchange underscored the ongoing national debate over voter ID laws, election access, and election security, with both sides framing their arguments as essential to protecting democracy.